Welcome to Creative Crits, Volume 1. Yeah. Get hyped like my friend Bashal here for Creative Crits. Apparently, this guy's name is Bashal. In one of the takes, he said, "Hi, my name's Bashal. Rhymes with facial." To I was really tempted to use it, but I, needless to say, did not use that take. So let's get into it. So this is Claremont Colleges. This is Stop 10. If you all wanted to check that out and see it in the experience. First of all, just overall, this was directed really well. The sound is very consistent. I'm going to give an overall very high score. A minus, because nothing's A plus. Maybe a B plus. But let's dive in. The best way to see this, I think we agree, is in After Effects. I just wanted to make the translation between onset and post very clear. So the first thing I'll do, I chose this scene first because it was the darkest. That's probably my one overall piece of feedback, is that the general exposure, while everything was clearly a nice fat histogram, it was just a little under the capability of the raw panos. So I'll just illustrate that right here. I'll turn off my color, and you can see in comparison, it's probably 2 or 3 stops lower than what Lightroom obviously can pull out of those raw files. Again, not a killer. What I ended up doing was I added some remove grain, and you can't, I don't know if you'll be able to see it here, but you could just see in some of the darker parts, the black on his turtleneck and some of the areas, you can start to see some of this color noise, which it's a little bit worse than, we'll say, like a regular kind of grain. It's not tight enough, so it's very visible. There's a fix to that. It looks a little less sharp, but that's what it takes to pull that up. Yeah, right here, exposure. This is about 3 stops. It's not completely accurate to optics, but it looks pretty good. The distance to camera is another aspect that I'll go over. In this particular scene, it was pretty good. If you take corner pinning off, you could see not really much corner pinning went into this. I'm going to try and illustrate it a little bit better. This area back here, while it's lined up, it's not easy to line up while I'm also trying to keep the grass consistent. Again, just a part of post that is sort of a necessary evil. However, done very well here. I think mesh warp might, you'll see some of the grass misalign. Moving right along. So overall, very good job. Scene 10. Just try to imagine how bright you're going to pull those raws up. I know you guys have pretty good previs understanding for photo editing and know generally you're going to want to expose a little bit brighter. I'm glad that nothing in the highlights was gone, nothing in the lowlights was gone, so it was all here. Great job. This was another one where it was more about distance to camera versus overall size of the scene. This one was particularly difficult to match up. You could see some of the remnants of that here in the trees. Not a killer at all, but the difficulty to, I'm literally recording, Alex. literally recording right now. No, I'm talking to. Okay, thanks, Alex. That's actually kind of helpful too. I have a person over here. I was explaining to Alex a couple of things. The alignment, while nothing is really out of the realm of possible for corner pinning, don't go crazy. This one is a horizontal alignment with a foreground element. If you see, if I hover over here, you can see these little sort of corners pop up. He's pretty close to the front, which is fine. There's no, I was able to mask and feather without having him disappear, but he's close compared to the width of the entire scene and this necessary width over here, obviously, with these guys, these acapella crew. So that I'll disable the corner pinning over here, and you'll see, I mean, it's really minimal even without corner pinning. I was able to get it pretty close, um, but that's just sort of the amount that I'm fudging. Um, Again, really good. A way that we could minimize this is maybe compress the scene. In other words, get them closer together, get him closer to them. Really, really good though. I wanted to illustrate a color situation. I know that you guys, I actually really like this. Most of your panos is just the pano. No, most of your panos featured the talent in them, and I know that a lot of clients complain about um, the loading process, how someone will load in on top of their empty pano and it looks weird. So I think this was a great idea. I think we should implement that whenever we can. However, when I turn this off, you can see how blue he is. Overall, everything is very blue. I was sort of fighting this like blue green in the color. The faded edges make it work. Had to mesh warp a little bit to, I think it's just the trees, yeah. Um, but yeah, I think we're leaning a little blue, a little cool in most of our Lightroom edits. So um, more on that. Let's move on. Okay, now those were probably the only scenes that I had to, let's say, wrestle with. Moving on, I wanted to highlight a really great scene, and this scene was awesome not only because of the color and the consistency. The courtyard was really nice. The talent did a great job. I really liked having this water element in the background, um, having the sound, and it was mixed really well, by the way, in there, just sort of lended another layer of like realism that I really liked. Um, there is one issue, if some of you After Effects users notice, there's a motion tracker on here. Um, I believe I can disable it for a minute. Not a huge deal, but while we're rushing, or you can see it in the mask as it's moving. Um, as we're rushing and trying to remain on schedule, all of that, it's really important that you hit record and then, well, first of all, don't hit it, just tap it. Because it seems like you push the record button so hard or so close to the moment of address that the camera was still shaking a little bit. I was able to track it and fix it. However, if there is like a strong breeze or anything that could be moving the camera, just try to put a hand at the base of it or make sure that it's not happening while the address is happening. Again, I was able to track it and it's perfectly rock solid. Let's look at color. Little bit darker than the pano, but honestly, it was not hard at all. One stop here. Looks great, sounds great. overall, really, really good job. And this one was pretty easy to match up. There are these foreground elements as tree, but it's if you look at it and try to imagine based on the camera, it is on a very similar plane to her. And again, I didn't even need to use her. You can see some doubling in the tiles, but it's really well within the what I would call acceptable. So overall, really good job. Okay, so this scene is eight, stop eight. I'm gonna try to remember to keep on telling you which stop it is so you can follow along in the actual tour. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. This is another great example of color and placement. It was really easy to match her up with these elements in the background. And the only thing I wanted to highlight with regard to color, this is a good example of it. So I could tell that some of the reason that this was exposed the way it was, which is well within the realm of acceptable, was for the sky. You don't want to lose these highlights. Honestly, lose them. Like I end up pushing it enough that it doesn't matter. And also, I'm mostly masking sky out. Whenever I have someone's head not directly under the sky, and in this case, you could see she looks like she's smaller and below the camera a little bit. So there's minimal sky overlap. Whether that was purposeful or not, good job. I have less sky to worry about, so I can just chop it out and use the perfectly exposed pano anyway. So well done there. Um, yeah, that's another just common practice that I'll do. On set, I'll try to make sure that I have an acceptable amount of headroom so that we can work with the pano to get a more perfect sky. And if there's a bunch of that behind her, let's say the horizon was a lot lower, it would be a lot more difficult to achieve a perfect exposure and keep the sky in. So, all right, I figured we might as well take a look at the fifth and final stop. I had really no issues with this one, but it does highlight another aspect of on-set recording and sort of like a support thing that everyone is responsible for. And also a matter of preference and how delicately you want to deal with things like this. But this scene shot really well, well within the correct exposure. The distance is great. I was able to match it almost like seamlessly. But I am pretty distracted, not gonna lie, by his like weird tucked in t-shirt situation. I don't know if it's just like a non-issue or if it would have been really weird on set. I always find it very interesting to try to navigate um, that aspect, the like, aesthetic aspect with clients. And I mean, this kid would probably be like, whatever, I'll do whatever. Or he just wanted to look a little bit neater. Um, but yeah, I always try to look out for things like that, be it like, hey, like your wardrobe's looking a little whatever, or your hair needs to be zhuzhed, or whatever it is. But and sometimes it's one of those things that you want to be sensitive of until after the fact. You're sort of like, what? I don't know. Just me. I could sound. I hope that doesn't sound like too much of a dick, but like at the end of the day, they don't know how they're going to look really, and using your discretion to help sometimes fosters confidence and sometimes doesn't. So it's just another thought. But again, overall, fantastic job. It is clear, sharp. I did not have one focus issue, which I'm really happy about. Um, and so, yeah, kudos to you guys. A minus. A minus.